Endless Hustle presented by Four Laps. If you're looking for workout gear that lets you train anywhere, no matter the season, no matter the setting, Four Laps has your back. This brand is always innovating with styles that keep you cool, let you breathe, and stretch so you can really move. The latest collection features some pretty sharp styles that blend recyclable materials with technology that moves with you. Plus, you can get 20% off your first purchase with code BroBible20. Head over to fourlaps.com now. All right, we got a great day on the Endless Hustle as I'm joined by fellow Philly brethren because I grew up like literally 10 minutes from you, Mike Vogel.
Is that right?
I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia. You're an Abington dude. Yeah. And we are now Philly brethren. We are now brothers over Zoom.
There we go. We've been brothers. Didn't even realize. There we go.
Dude, I am pretty sure I met you at some point. I didn't put two and two together, and I was looking at it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I met this guy somewhere, somehow, either in some kind of like kids sports league or something like that.
Highly possible. Highly possible. Was not good at anything, but enjoyed playing.
No, I wouldn't say I was incredible. I mean, I played college basketball, but I wouldn't quite consider myself good. Dude, congratulations. Brand new movie, Collection. Sex Life was a monster hit. Let's kick it off with Collection. I had Alex Pettifer on the show recently. We had the best chat. He was telling Michael Shannon stories, and I was absolutely in tears because I've interviewed Shannon like a dozen times, and I'm just like, there ain't no one like that dude. He's unbelievable.
So unique. So unique.
So this movie, obviously, you come off Sex Life, and it's this monster. Now this thing's coming out. It's an indie. What's the difference between making a Netflix show, a bigger budget Netflix show, and doing a smaller indie?
Well, I think you get the exposure in a Netflix type show. You get put in front of millions upon millions of eyeballs, which is fun, and which is exciting. But I think, the beauty of an indie like this is it's no holes barred. You have no constraints. The freedom to kind of create a character and to make choices that you love, that are out there, that are unique and crazy and pushing the envelope, that's the reason you do something like this. And I find it to be a lot more collaborative. So we had a blast doing Collection, and but a definite difference. I think I love film for the standpoint of you get to pop in and pop out of something in 3 months, versus there's advantages to taking the long run of a television series as well. But for my ADD, film is good.
Obviously, Sex Life becomes this monster. My mom's a huge fan, by the way, and she found out I was having you on the show, and she's like, I love that guy. And you're a dad, you got 3 kids. They had you nude half the show. That must have been quite the situation.
So yeah. There was no visits to set for my kids. That's for darn sure.
One day they are going to grow up and be like, our dad was a total DILF. Like, this was unbelievable.
My oldest is 14 now, and she's it's hitting, and I'm having to divert quite a lot. But I'm still a complete nerd to her Gen Z humor. I don't understand, and so she takes the piss out of me quite a lot, and so I'm the brunt of the jokes.
Has she been hit up at school already? Because at that point, the kids are kind of old enough, and Sex Life, because of Netflix, can be seen pretty much by anyone. I don't know anyone who does those child constraint controls, but has she come home and been like, Dad?
The beauty, it was, so we had them on a really great homeschool program. So I shelter them as much as I possibly can, lock them in cages and make sure they hear nothing. But no, it's breaking through. And, we, on a serious note, we had to have a very serious conversation with them when I made the decision to do this. I've never done anything like that in my career. And I think what I love about the show is it's told from the standpoint of the female gaze, from female desire, and a lot of times that's taken the back seat to the male gaze. And so I think for me, having my daughters grow up with a very healthy view of sexuality for their partners at some point in the future to be later named, certainly not now. But to kind of give voice to that and give voice to something that I think women have been told to bottle up for such a long time was good to be a part of.
When a show like that hits, I had Leo Raz on the show recently, and he's the star of Fauda, which is also a Netflix monster. He has a new show hit on. I'm like plugging for Leo during your interview.
All good.
Leo's awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
But that took him from one level as an actor, successful wise, to another level as an actor, successful wise. When you have something like Sex Life hit, and now the visibility is increased, how does that change your career? More offers pouring in? What happens after something like that?
Yeah, it's a lot easier to it's a lot easier to have those future job conversations. You know, everything. What's so fascinating, I think, about the world today is you take a behemoth like Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or any of these other streaming outlets. Sitting in my house in Tennessee, you don't feel the reach that it's such. We're sitting here on Zoom having a conversation that heretofore for 20 years prior to this in my career, we'd be in a hotel somewhere in Los Angeles. People would be funneling in and out of a room, and you feel sort of the presence of something. Here, and now in this current age, you're having this incredible reach to tens, hundreds of millions of people, and yet you never leave the confines of your own house. And so trying to get that to make sense in my old brain, my old fashioned brain, it just doesn't seem to compute. But as job opportunities come up and conversations come up, you start to see the effect that, or you're talking to people in Brazil and China and India and Russia and the Philippines and here and there, and you're like, wow, yeah, the global reach of something like this is insane.
How does an audition process look for a show like that? Because it's one thing when you're Brad Pitt or Bradley Cooper, there's no audition process. It's like, hey, Brad, can you be in our movie or show? But when you're an actor who's not Brad Pitt or Bradley Cooper, you most have to go through an audition process. What does that look like? And then when you finally get notified, hey, you're going to be on this Netflix show, and you have no idea if it's going to be a hit or not, but it's still great to get a long-term job, at least for a season. What's that process look like?
I mean, I was extremely fortunate on this one. I did not have to audition. But it was certainly a process because the material was what it was. There was several, and again, this is a sign of the times of how different things are. We're doing this very thing that you and I are doing over a computer. And this was even before lockdown, with the creators of the show, sort of talking about their vision and the direction of the show, and the eventual story that they want to tell here, and feeling me out to see if this is something, because it is such a departure from anything I've done prior to this point, whether it was something that I was comfortable doing. And getting to Sarah Shahi and I have been friends since we both started at the same time, and getting to meet Adam Dimas and sort of all the ingredients that went into it was it was a great cake to be a part of baking. So
your co-star on Collection, Alex Pettifer, had a very similar journey, because obviously Magic Mike ends up becoming Magic Mike. And I had a great conversation with him about this, because coming out of something like that, you're essentially like the good-looking guy in Magic Mike. And how do you then leverage that into, hey, I want to be more of a character actor. I want to be able to do different types of roles. For someone like Channing Tatum, he was able to turn it into, hey, I'm an A+ lister. And Alex just really said, I dug myself into the craft. You're kind of having that same type of moment with Sex Life, where, yeah, you're naked a ton of the time. It's a great show. People are responding to it. I'm sure it's going to get a second season, probably a third and a fourth and a fifth, because it's a hit. But what's your mindset with something like that, where you're like, I don't want to just be the good looking guy. Here's what I really want my career to look like.
Yeah, 100%. That's what it comes down to. that provides a visibility. The harder thing is sustaining something in every choice after that, you know. And I've been fortunate enough in my career, I think, to kind of bob and weave in and out of roles that were not your typical beautiful or leading man type thing, and trying to find some things with an edge. And that's why I loved collection so much, because I got to let Alex be the pretty boy, and which he is not the pretty boy. He is and he isn't, but he'll hate that. He'll hate that comment. But we both have that same sort of mentality of, I want to run as far as I possibly can from that. And I remember saying to my wife, after like the first week of filming, I said, babe, this is so incredible. For once, I don't have to service the love story. I get to just be the jerk, you know, obnoxious, brash friend. And I don't have to worry about how I look. I don't have to worry about dealing with her feelings and my feelings. And I can just go and hit people in the face. It's fantastic. So, but that was nice.
So I also remember I interviewed you on a red carpet, and I now remember where it was. It was at the NBC Upfronts for the show that you had with Anne Heche.
The Brave.
I totally forgotten about that. And I was looking at your IMDb earlier today. But if you look at your IMDb, obviously you've gone gig to gig to gig, which is an actor's life. Now, again, sex life hits. That's going to probably end up being a long-running paycheck. But as an actor, how hard is it? Because it is essentially a gig industry. Is it really the goal? Is it like, hey, I want to find my Sopranos or my Breaking Bad? Or do you enjoy the gig part of it and you love jumping project to project?
I love jumping project to project. You know, when I first started in all this, you either did film or you did television. There was no, you know, if you did television, you were, but for rare cases like Clooney or Jed Aniston and a lot of those guys coming off of Friends, you rarely got hired you rarely became the movie star. And so for 10 years of my career, it was only in film. And then I think the model started changing as streaming came in, and it became more about your global reach and that financeability aspect of things. And when you saw what a Netflix or a Hulu or any of these things could do internationally, and then all of a sudden all great writers started moving to television and streaming, and you're looking at this material coming out going, holy cow, I want to be a part of that. So the gig to gig I love, because again, it satisfies that squirrel part of me where I'm like, I love bouncing from one thing to another. From a success standpoint, you obviously want your work to be seen. And if something gets a long running commitment, then it means that it's kind of hit the zeitgeist and people are tuning back. But it's a very fine line, right? You don't want to be defined by one singular thing that, oh, that's the guy from that one thing that he never does anything else again. So it's finding that balance. And I think sort of in the day and age that we live in, it's the beauty and the curse of a life lived on these things now, is that our attention spans have just gone like this. So you can do 8 episodes of Netflix sex life, and then you can do 8 episodes of something else. You can do 3 episodes of something else. You can do a couple episodes of this thing over here, and people don't associate you. They'll wait for that next show to come back, but then they moved on to something else, and they're ready to digest something else in a different weekend. So I think as an actor, it's kind of a fun time. It's kind of a fun time to be alive and be doing this, because you get that variety that you want, in your longevity and your ability to sort of take bites out of different apples is more than it's ever been before.
Every actor and actress has that string where you're either auditioning for 1 million pilots or movies. You are getting 1 million pilots, but they're getting canceled after 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. I call it the Death Star string, where it's just like, it feels like no matter how much you're putting into it, and I don't want to call it failure, because just even getting a job in your business is a success. but it feels like, man, am I ever going to break through? What was that Death Star string for you where you were like, shit, this is never going to happen the way I want it to happen?
Uh, I'll let you know when it happens. It's listen. I've been insanely blessed to. I think there's a joke that all actors have. I think when we get hired, I remember when I was doing Under the Dome, Rochelle Lefebvre and I were kind of joking in the trailer one day about, yeah, we fooled them again. We fooled them one more time. Maybe next time they'll realize that there was never anything there, and they won't hire me. And it's the things that us insecure actors tell ourselves that it's because you see at some point the gig's up, and you love what you do so much. To find something where I cannot wait to get up in the morning and go to work. I cannot wait to step onto set, because it gets those juices flowing. And I've been so fortunate to continue to work from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, for 20 years now. And it never looks like what you want it to look like. Maybe it will someday. But I've often said, you know what, I will be so happy to be 80 years old and possibly drooling on myself and have someone wheel me out onto set and dump me out of my wheelchair. And if I still get to do this, I'll be happy as a clam. May I be so lucky. We'll see.
So obviously you're in Tennessee, you'd mentioned that now, but originally from Philadelphia. Were Philadelphia sports a big part of your life? Are they still a big part of your life?
Oh, massive. I don't think if you're from Philly, you cannot go somewhere else and root for that home team. It just won't happen. You will be that guy that everyone wants to hate, and they hate Philadelphia sports. They hate Philadelphia fans. And I just smile a big fat smile and say, yep, we booed Santa Claus. I've had, a buddy of mine played for the Eagles. A buddy of mine was a professional ball player, played against the Phillies. And every single person I think that I've spoken to that plays Philadelphia teams over the years, the first thing they say is, it's the toughest place to play, but you can't help but respect the fans. You can't help but respect the town because they are so diehard. And I think the only other town I've ever experienced that was the same way was Pittsburgh, which, growing up in Philly, Pittsburgh is like, it's another country because you're 6 hours away in a different part of the state. They're not part of us. And then we filmed She's Out of My League there years ago. And I fell in love with the town. I said, you guys are exactly the same as Philly. We say yous, you say yins. Other than that, you have the Steelers and the Pirates. We've got the Eagles and the Phillies. The Flyers were playing the Penguins in the playoffs at that point. And you realize what great sports towns all have in common is just that blue collar, diehard, salt of the earth sports fandom. So yeah, I love it.
Speaking of She's Out of My League, I've talked to Alice Eve and Jay Baruchel about that. Did you guys have any idea that would become the classic that it became? Because it really has become like this millennial cult classic.
Yeah, no, we had no idea. TJ Miller, which was a bizarre thing because he and I had just done Cloverfield at the time, and then here we were again on, or was it the other way around? Goodness gracious, I don't know. It all runs together, but we literally went like back to back on these two films. For me, that was a bizarre one because I was the one non-comic in the group. You've got TJ, you've got Nate, you have Jay, and these guys and all the other supporting roles were these heavy comedic. TJ would go out and do comic clubs at night after we were done. After we'd be done filming. And I'd never seen someone control a room like that in my life. He was incredible. And I felt so outgunned all these guys, because I'd heard rumors that you get on a lot of these comedies and it can be cutthroat. People just because everyone's trying to protect their jokes, but literally we're all behind the monitors laughing at each other, cheering each other on. And so you hit a point where you're like, I don't care if anyone ever sees this thing. The experience was so fantastic. And the fact that people have watched it over the years is just icing on the cake.
Do you get a lot of recognition for that? Will people be like, hey, it's a dude from She's Out of My League, it's Jack?
Once they put two and two together, but I think it's been such a long time ago, at this point, that once people, they'll recognize you from something else, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're the dude with the shaving and right, yeah, I love that movie. So it's always. And also, I think being down here in Tennessee, which is the beauty of it, no one cares. No one cares at all about it. You're sitting at a restaurant and Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman are sitting there eating with you, and no one's talking to them. No one cares. It's kind of a beautiful slice of the world to be, where everyone's just kind of oblivious to it all.
When something like that hits, or even like Sex Life, obviously Sex Life right away was like #1 on Netflix. What's the reaction for you? Is it like, hey, let's go pop some bottles? Like, what is it? What happens when something actually is a success that you're part of?
As my wife will yell at me for, I never stopped to smell the roses long enough. So that's something that I'm working on, and I think it's something. Everyone's different, but personally for me, there's a part of me, I think, that never kind of shed that blue collar plumber son from Philadelphia aspect of my life. And so I kind of look at what I do and I'm like, how did I get here? What am I doing here? I should still have my hands in a toilet somewhere. And so on one hand, on quiet moments, I kind of get to sit back and go, wow, what a lucky SOB I am. And then at the same time, I look at it and go, I got to keep dancing. I got to keep moving. I got to keep, because I can't relax. I can't. And somewhere in there is that part where you learn to sit back and go, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. A lot of people just saw that thing. And I'm learning to do that. It's taken me 20 years to do that.
I was going to ask you, obviously, Abington isn't the hotbed of producing De Niro and Pacino and Daniel Day-Lewis. So as a kid in Abington, how do you even get your start? How do you begin acting?
I'm still trying to figure that one out. I mean, I was going to go to the Air Force Academy. And, I grew up in, I don't know if you remember where Willow Grove Naval Air Base was, but it was a reserve base. And I was in Warminster, like 5 minutes away from there. And so I grew up, my parents would drop me off to watch the planes come and go all day long doing flight ops. And that's all I ever wanted to do, is be a fighter pilot. When I went to Philadelphia College of Bible for a semester out of high school. And in that time was dating a girl that wanted to be a model. And so I went to one of those model search things that never work for anyone. They always take your money. And I ended up started modeling through there, booked my first television show right before 9/11 that moved me out to Los Angeles. Met my wife at a model search, at the same model search place, speaking at it years after that. So that's how I started, and then started training seriously right back in New York. So I would literally be plumbing with my dad. I would go to Trenton, take the train up to New York City, do all my auditions in the morning, come home, jump in a truck. And that's literally how I would practice my accents. I would inevitably show up at someone's house to repair a faucet with a Scottish accent or a British accent or something. And then I would flood their house. They'd call my dad screaming, "You had that British guy over here." He's like, "Ma'am, I don't have a Mike." And he's having to explain away my knuckleheaded self. But it was sort of a fun period of my life of living in both worlds, and then eventually, you know, right before 9/11, booking that first television show that changed everything for me, moved me to Los Angeles. So
just think, there's a bunch of people out there now who got to see your bare ass 20 years later. You were knee deep fixing their toilet, plumbing it out, and now they're like watching Netflix and they're like, I know that ass.
I've seen that before. No, you haven't.
Mike, this was awesome. Congratulations. Obviously, collection, but the success of Sex Life. You're awesome, dude. It's great to see Philly people doing well. Thanks for a great interview, man.
Thank you, Arthur. I appreciate it. Have a good one, my friend.
Enjoy, brother. Talk to you.
We'll see you. Bye.